can confirm you are live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee. It's June 2nd and it's about 8 minutes after 1. My apologies for our delay. We had some technical issues we had to deal with. I'm Tony Mancini, the chair of the committee. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognize that we are all treaty people. I'd like to do a little bit of roll call, make sure we have our audio and our video working properly. So if we may begin with the Vice Chair, Councillor Morris. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues and staff. Happy to be joining you from Clayton Park this afternoon.
Beautiful Clayton Park. And next is Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Good afternoon, colleagues, Mr. Chair, staff. All set in beautiful, sunny Fall River today.
It is indeed. And Councillor Austin sends his regrets. He has urgent matters, as we always do, councillors in Dartmouth taking care of Dartmouth. So we'll make sure if any action is needed, we'll give it to him. So that's what happens. Councillor Cleary from his beautiful backyard, as you can see, folks. Welcome, Councillor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, colleagues. Actually, from the front yard, you can see beautiful Quinpool Road and all that wonderful traffic right behind.
Hey, I'm surprised that you have not done any of our committee meetings or regional council meetings from your Ardmore Tea Room. That would be a very appropriate spot to do it. So, welcome. Is the Deputy Mayor with us yet? Madam Clerk, we haven't heard from the Deputy Mayor, so we haven't, but when she joins in, we'll take a moment to stop and welcome her also. I believe we do have quorum, so let's proceed. Next up is approval of minutes from May 5th, 2022. Do we have someone to move those minutes, please?
I move.
By Councillor Moore, second by?
I can second.
By Councillor Dale Gammon. All those in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, we now have official minutes. Next is approval of the order of business, approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are no additions or deletions.
Wonderful, thank you. So I ask for a motion to approve the agenda and present agenda in front of us. Who can move the agenda?
I can, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Daigle Gammon.
And I'll second.
What a tag team. And Councillor Moore seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
We now have an agenda. Business arising out of the minutes? Seeing none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Any members of the committee have a conflict of interest to declare? Seeing none. And then it comes to motions of reconsideration, motions of rescissions, consideration of deferred business, notice of tabled matters, all none. And we're now moving on to number 10.1, correspondence. Madam Clerk, are there any correspondence that have been received?
We received no correspondence.
Okay, fantastic. There are no correspondence. 10.2 is petitions. Madam Clerk, any petitions that have been received?
The municipal clerk's office did not receive any petitions.
Thank you. Are any members that have any petitions to present? Seeing none from the committee. Now we'll get into the meat of the meeting. We have two presentations today. First up is 10.3.1, Overview of Ashrae. Tom Kendall. Tom, are you online? I see in the chat, Tom did identify, Madam Clerk, that he was having some audio problems. So Tom, are you with us? I see him coming on. Tom, I see his name appear. Madam Clerk, have you had any discussions with Tom?
I have not. I would suggest perhaps down in the corner where the audio button is, if you click on the arrow and you go to check audio. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I got moved into an attendee and then I got moved back into a panelist role.
So Tom, it's Councillor Tony Mancini. Welcome to the committee meeting.
Thank you.
Do you actually have a slide deck to present also?
Yes, we have two presenters today from Ashrae, myself and Mick Schwolder, Ashrae president, and we provided some slide decks earlier. Mick, I see, is also on here as a panelist, and he'll be starting us off.
Madam Clerk, are you handling the slides? Or are we handling the slides? Is staff handling the slides, Joe?
I believe the answer to that is yes. We were asked to provide the slides, and the first slide that I plan to present is showing.
All right, well, Mick and Tom, to both of you, welcome to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. We look forward to your presentation. You have 10 minutes after the end of your presentation. You might get clarifying questions from the committee members. So I turn the floor over to you, gentlemen. Thank you very much and welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the time. Thank you for the important work you do. My name is Mick Schwedler. I'm the president of Ashrae. And if you can go to the next slide, I'll explain a little bit about Ashrae. This year's society theme is focused around our members: personal growth, global impact, and feed the roots. And you are working on the global impact part. How do we reduce environmental emissions? How do we make buildings more sustainable? And that is exactly what Ashrae is focused on these days. If we can go to the next slide, please. You see our mission, you see our vision. Our mission is not a technical mission. Our mission is to serve humanity. We use technical issues. We use the built environment, but we want to make sure that people are safe and healthy, and that built environment is sustainable no matter where people are in the world, where they live, their economic status, or any other issues that they're dealing with in their lives. Next slide, please. Just to give you some background, Ashrae was formed in 1894, and our first chapter, which we refer to as our grassroots, was dedicated in 1906. Our first chapter out of the United States was in Toronto, Canada in 1922. And as Tom will be sharing in a little while, we have a chapter in Halifax. Globally, we're more than 51,500 members as of now, over 4,600 in Canada. And we have 199 chapters worldwide. We call them our grassroots. And I'll explain what we do from a society standpoint on how we work with our chapters in a subsequent slide. Next slide, please. So when people ask us about what we do, we make buildings more sustainable, more resilient to the future climate changes. We help reduce energy utilization and carbon emissions, particularly. One of the things we did in the last 2.5 years with our refrigeration, we kept the vaccines cold. And that made sure that they stayed efficient and their efficacy was high. 40% of the world's food spoils between the field and your fork. Our processes and our technologies reduce that. But most importantly, we make an impact by keeping people safe and healthy in the buildings and in that built environment. Next slide, please. How do we serve humanity? We have so many different ways. We have standards that often become local codes when jurisdictions accept them. We do an amazing amount of training and education throughout the world. We also have design guides with respect to reducing energy usage all the way down to zero energy. The most recent one is a multifamily residential buildings, which are the fastest growing building sector in the entire world. Those are available for free. All our research is done independently. It's funded by our members. During a pandemic, they donated more than $2.3 million, and we matched that as a society out of our revenues. Our primary focus right now is on decarbonization. We have a task force that's working hard to get information up on the web. And the way we put it, our technical people, global people throughout the world develop the information, but then it's our grassroots, the people close to you and in Halifax that gets that to the people who need it. We're going to have a worldwide decarbonization conference in Athens, Greece in October, and we were participants in COP26. So not only do we get involved, but we do the hard work, the heavy lifting. Next slide, please. We're very diverse. We're global. We've about 22% of our membership is from outside of North America. We have women, men, young, vintage, cultures throughout the world. And that gives us that diverse thought and that global perspective as we develop the materials so that we can serve humanity. Next slide, please. Often we're asked when we come to a meeting such as yours, what are we here for? We're not asking for legislation. We're not asking for money. What we are asking is that when we can help, you let us know, particularly the people from our Halifax chapter that Tom will be presenting. The reason we ask this is many of the people coming to you are going to have a certain skew that they want to put on things. We want to give you the best objective and independent information you need to make the decisions you need for your constituents. We can help with training, education. We've worked with other governmental entities to develop and adopt our codes, to adopt our training, and to adopt the information we have. So we want to help you actually reduce environmental emissions, to make buildings more sustainable so that we can fulfill our vision of a healthy and sustainable built environment for all. Tom, if you want to take the next slides, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mick. That was great. I'll just wait for the my slide deck to come up. I'd just like to thank Mick for joining us today from Atlanta. He's the president of Ashrae this year, and he was supposed to be in town actually yesterday, but wasn't able to make it, unfortunately. But I believe he has zoomed in for a chapter meeting, which was greatly appreciated, and it was great that you could join us today. So my name is Tom Kendall. I am the Government Affairs Committee Chair for Ashrae Halifax chapter. Next slide, please. So the Ashrae Halifax chapter has pretty deep roots in Halifax. We were established in 1965. The picture you're seeing there is the original Board of Governors, I believe, and the one below is our picture on our 50th anniversary, which was about 7 years ago. So we've got about 57 years of presence here in Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, and Halifax in particular. We have 198 members across Nova Scotia. Newfoundland is actually also included in our chapter. And just some general activities. I mean, we've brought 7 chapter regional conferences to Halifax since our inception, 1 larger conference, and we'll be doing more of those, in the future as they go around to the different chapters. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. Yeah, we have, thank you. So just to give you a general idea of the activity the chapter does, we have monthly technical presentations we call lunch and learns. We have other technical presentations kind of as they come up also. We have a newsletter that we send out to our membership, and we have regular networking events. On top of that, also, we regularly do a sustainability project a year. We do a volunteer day. You can see in the photo there, that's us at a Habitat for Humanity build a couple of years ago. More recently, we've done volunteer days with Feed Nova Scotia. We've had to, obviously we've canceled those the past 2 years, but we're hoping to get back at it next year. We also have student branches, which is based, I believe, in the Dalhousie Mechanical Engineering Department, but also has members in NSCC and SMU. We provide yearly student scholarships, and we raise around $10,000 a year for Ashrae's research promotion, which Mick was alluding to there. That's the fund that supports independent research on a wide variety of issues, and that money more or less stays in Canada for Canadian research. Next slide, please. So in terms of my role, I'm with the Government Affairs Committee, the chair of that committee. And as Mick was saying, what we do is, well, we do kind of four main things, as you can see here. Outreach and coordination, that'd be outreach to different government entities, from elected officials to public servants, anyone in a governmental decision-making capacity. We try to make connections with and let them know we're doing, such as we're doing here today. Education-wise, again, this is goes back to what Mick was saying. We look to reach out to and make connections with different government officials, and then also provide kind of education on any issues that they're currently dealing with, or deal with a lot, and providing some unbiased, highly technical and informed information. We have public policy positions that Ashrae supports, and we highlight each year. Those include things like climate change and building resiliency, diversity in the HVAC workforce, a number of those things. We have policy positions on those things and explain what how Ashrae kind of can help support those public policies, and what tools we have also to support those. And then we have an advocacy role. As Mick was saying, we're not lobbyists, we're not pushing for any particular types of policies or anything like that, but we do advocate for good practices, let's say, in the built environment in terms of operation, design, that sort of thing, and try to bring the most up-to-date information available, and best practices and that sort of thing.
Tom, I'll get you to wind up. Your time is up. Just finish up. That'd be great.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, next slide, please. In the remainder of this slide deck is just kind of what we've done the past year, and to give you a sense of like how we can engage with people. We have, this is a letter we sent out on COVID mitigation strategies. Next slide, please. David Brushett from HRM did a presentation on net zero corporate buildings as part of the HALA Act. Next slide, please. Robert Bean came in, and who's a distinguished lecturer. He did a presentation for us on the indoor environmental quality and energy. Then we also had a meeting with Robert and HRCE on indoor environmental quality in schools. Next slide, please. And we had Doug Cochran come in, who did a lunch and learn on cold climate design, and then did an Efficiency Nova Scotia OEM network presentation on building heat decarbonization. Next slide, please. And yeah, well, and that's just to give you a sense of the kinds of things we can kind of bring to bear and engage with people on. Thank you.
Well, great, Tom and Mitch. Thank you both very much for the presentation. I go to colleagues. Any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, I do have a quick question. So your local members, Tom, or what industries are, give me an example of types of industries represented in your membership.
Yeah, so Ashrae is, it's primarily HVAC professionals, so heating, cooling, ventilation, I should also say refrigeration. So the membership is really the HVAC sector. So from design, consulting engineers, sometimes manufacturer representation, there might be trades. It's not exclusive to engineers, say. I'd say we probably have mostly engineers, but like I'm not an engineer myself. But so anyone kind of working in that industry, really. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. I see there's a question from Councillor Morris. Councillor Morris, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if either of our guests could explain perhaps what they're doing with other municipalities on the policy side related to climate change, please.
I can try that. And by the way, I'm a volunteer too, and I'm actually not in Atlanta. That's where our headquarters are. I live in one of your southern provinces. We call it Wisconsin in the United States. So we are working very closely with entities throughout the world right now to help reduce their carbon emissions. We worked with the state of Washington to put together, we have a standard 100 which is sustainability in existing buildings. We worked with them to make sure that it was tailored for their particular constituency, for their building climate, and also their physical climate. We worked with NYSERDA in the state of New York. We put a series of, it's either 17 or 19 seminars together. They're webinars available online for free on heat pumps, because people are looking at heat pumps to help reduce the carbon emissions in areas. We just did a sustainability conference, and we're doing a decarbonization conference. I will say it's of the highest interest. Our board in January, we don't have a huge budget. Our board in January allocated $550,000 to expedite our work on decarbonization and sustainability. And the International Code Council then allocated another $550,000 out of their funds. They aren't pooled, but we see ourselves as not necessarily the people who set the goals, but it's really our community that's going to fulfill and determine, will we become sustainable? Will we reduce our energy usage? Will we reduce our emissions, water usage, things like that? We partner with US Green Building Council, Canadian Green Building Council, all over the world, because we can't do it ourselves. We're working with people like you and other associations. We can have a real impact, and that's our goal. Thank you for the question.
That's great. Thank you very much.
I see no further questions. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for your presentation and the work that you do in the various communities, and Tom, your work here in our community. Mitch, make sure you do make the trip up north, and we would appreciate your hard-earned American dollars in our shops and restaurants and pubs here too. So
I would have loved to be in Halifax last night. I love it there. Thank you for the work you do, and please let us know how we can help. That's our ask.
Thank you both, gentlemen. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So next we have our second presenter, which is no stranger to this committee and HRM, our folks at our HRM Alliance. Courtney, are you with us today? Looking for Courtney. Are you online, Courtney? I see some clicking of screens. There you are.
Yes.
Courtney, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Beautiful day.
Well, it is a beautiful day. Are you by yourself, or do you have a colleague with you today?
No, I'll be presenting with Mary Ellen Donovan. I see that she is here.
Mary Ellen, are you online?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just before we get started, I wondered if I could say a few words about why I invited Courtney and Mary Ellen today.
By all means, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Green Network Plan, which two of the councillors on the meeting today are probably very familiar with, because they were part of those conversations. Some of the other councillors, the newer ones, may be less familiar with the Green Network Plan. But this is something that HRM put a lot of resources into, a lot of staff time, and over a number of years. And we also had a huge commitment from citizens across HRM on the Green Network Plan. And although it was passed by council in 2018, many of those involved feel that it has languished a bit, that it has stalled. And so what I was hoping to hear today was some of the reasons that might be, and what we could do to more fully implement the Green Network Plan. I think it's really important to the quality of life for citizens in HRM that we have nature throughout our city and in all our neighborhoods. And it's also a really critical part of Halifax, and a commitment of Halifax to fully implement the Green Network Plan. So if it has stalled, I think it's important for councillors to know about it and what we can do. It's also a really critical time right now. It's very timely to hear about this, because many of the items or the actions in the Green Network Plan should be implemented in the regional plan. And this is a year when we're reviewing the regional plan. So there's an opportunity now to more fully act on the actions that we've committed to. So that's just a little bit of background and context and sort of a sense of why this is a timely point to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I would be interested also to hear from our guest how the province is accepting our Green Network Plan as they've taken on their task force in some of our projects. So look, thank you, Councillor. Courtney, Mary Ellen, to both of you, welcome. You have 10 minutes. We'll give you a heads up when you have about 30 seconds left. So the floor is yours. I believe you have a slide deck. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, Madam Clerk, if you could bring up the slide deck, and I believe you're advancing the slides for them. We'll just wait through the slide deck itself. Jill, do you have that slide deck coming?
Yeah, it'll be up just momentarily.
Okay. As we wait, this is where somebody should be humming the Jeopardy soundtrack at this point in time, please.
Mr. Chair, it might be a good time to remind council and those watching about a number of resources that our full council gets compared to our community councils and committees. So just important to cut our staff a little slack because they're the only ones doing everything.
That's right. I wasn't trying to pressure them. So thank you, Councilor. So I see the slide deck. Jill, thank you very much. Once again, Courtney, Mary Ellen, the floor is yours, and we'll start the timer for 10 minutes. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for allowing us to present today. I think I'm likely a familiar face to everyone already, but just for the record, my name is Courtney Dunsby, and I'm the Sustainable Cities Coordinator at the Ecology Action Center. I will be presenting as well with Mary Ellen Donovan, former city solicitor and board member of Friends of Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes. We're here today representing our HRM Alliance, which is a coalition of over 60 groups in HRM advocating for complete communities and a protected green network. Next slide, please.
No, we lost the slide deck.
You better restart my clock, Tony.
Yeah, I did pause it. There we go. We do look forward to the time we get back in person too. So there you go, Courtney.
As do I. Thank you. Well, Councillor Morris articulated this so eloquently, and I may repeat her a little bit, but the question of why are we here today, and specifically why now? This is really a pivotal moment in time. Our population and economic forecasts show that the municipality is growing at a rapid rate. I believe HRM is Canada's second fastest growing municipality, actually. And at the same time, we're combating many crises: housing, climate, biodiversity, topics that I'm sure you all hear about all of the time. And so the Alliance's role in this is to advocate for growth, but in the right way: strategic, sensible, sustainable. And green spaces and natural assets are part of that, and they can help the city to achieve many of its goals. And as mentioned by Councillor Morris, there is a legitimate policy opportunity on the table right now to address many of these barriers in the ongoing regional plan review, as well as the bylaw and simplification program, which is going on over the next few years. Next slide, please. So given that money talks, one of the questions on the table would be, what is the value of green spaces? Just to sort of drive our point home even more why we're here today. It is a fact that if we properly integrate our natural areas into planning of our communities, we'll save money in the long term on things like cleanup, remediation, flooding. You know, not only does preserving our parks and natural areas contribute to climate adaptation, a topic we're talking about even more, but it provides opportunities for recreation, improved well-being, and actually increases land values. So for example, as you can see in our presentation, in the 3 wards surrounding New York City's Central Park, the land value increased tenfold immediately following the park's completion. And in a 2015 report on the value of Central Park's contributions to New York City's economy, it was estimated that be at 26 billion. So there is really huge economic value here, in addition to all of the other reasons that I mentioned for why we should be preserving our natural assets. Next slide, please.
God, must be a better way to advance those slides than doing that. All right, there you go, Craig.
It's okay, I'm adaptable. So I would also just like to say that HRM does also recognize its natural assets as being valuable. This can be seen in the 2006 regional plan, as well as echoed in the 2014 regional plan. In 2018, Council adopted the Green Network Plan, which is 79 actions for how to embed this natural asset value and protection into policy. And also just would like to acknowledge that more recently, HRM has hired staff to work on natural assets and are very excited to see where that work goes. Next slide, please. Perfect, we got it going. So yeah, although Council's strategic priorities, your mission mentions a sustainable environment, and we have this great plan that I mentioned and Councilor Morris mentioned, the Green Network Plan, we're left with a lot of questions. You know, primarily, why have there been very little on the ground visible impacts? Why are environmental policies taking a back seat to development rights and development policies? Why are, you know, perhaps planning staff or development officers not aware of the Halifax Green Network Plan? Are they aware of it? And, you know, why is the Utility and Review Board concluding cases in favor of the development policies and sort of rendering the natural asset policies subordinate, which has occurred a couple times as of recently. Next slide, please. And so really the problem statement here today is that there is no legal framework for protecting natural assets in HRM. And so we've done some work to identify barriers to this, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen today in her wealth of legal expertise to outline those barriers. Thanks.
So nice to be here this afternoon and see everybody, and hopefully we can offer some contributions to the subject to have everybody understand kind of what our take on things is. Next slide, please. So we had this, we came across the question, like, why is there so little evident progress, at least from the community's point of view? And so we decided, well, we didn't understand why there seemed to be so little progress, and there had to be a reason. So the last couple of years, we've been paying attention and have a little bit of focus and paying attention to see if whether we can we come up with any answers. So what we thought today we could do is put a few of these on the table for you to think about. You might think we're wrong, but at least we're putting them on the table for people to actually entertain and think about a bit. The first first thing we thought we would bring to your attention is that in the current charter, you've got a section that says that when you adopt new regional policies, which is the process currently underway, it has to be accompanied by the associated land use bylaw provisions that would implement those policies. And what our observation is, and it's certainly not always the case, that's definitely, but generally, we're not seeing land use bylaw implementation provisions that accompany a lot of the fabulous environmental policy statements that you find in the 06-14 plans and in the Green Network Plan. We're just not seeing them. So moving on, so that's one observation. Next observation. Next slide, please. So the next observation we thought we'd offer up is that often the natural asset policies only require that the policy be considered. But for the most part, we have very little information on how it was considered and what the outcome of the consideration was. Did it actually result in any kind of a change, even a small change, a big change, a medium change, any change at all? We really have, the community at least has very little information on whether we are actually getting any benefit from these stated policies. And one of the things that we've also observed is that for some reason in a number of, for example, the rezoning applications, you're not finding the existing environmental policies finding their way to the staff reports that would be part of the policy package to inform council so that they can make the best decision that they can. Development policies are mentioned, but for some reason, often the environmental policies have fallen to the wayside. The next slide, please. So our next thought that we thought we might bring to your attention is that in one or more of the secondary planning strategies, it's actually explicit in the secondary plan policy that the environmental policies are secondary to the development policies. Now, mind you, it turns out that the transportation policies are also secondary. So they follow, they have lots of friends. The environmental policies and the natural asset policies have lots of friends in a second class status. But the question is, well, why are they to be treated expressly as dictated by the secondary plan? Why are they to be considered secondary? And our view, our hope is that at some point, sections like 8.2 in the Mainland South Plan just disappear. And so that all policies are to be considered the same, have the same weight, and then council in its good judgment would decide which policy should prevail in any one decision that it's taking. There's a similar plan statement in the Beaver Bank, Hammond's Plains, Upper Sackville secondary planning strategy, and that one's at 9.2. So next observation. Moving on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is 4 out of 6. Another observation that we've made is that in some instances, we're finding conflicting policies in the regional plan and the secondary planning strategies. And just to offer up one example, in the Trimberley area, we have Little Sheldrake and Maple Lakes. And for those who are unfamiliar with that area, these two lakes are cheek by jowl, they practically touching one another. So it's exactly in the same area. And they're not big lakes, modest sized lakes, but these lakes are found within the map 11, which you've probably heard on many occasions in connection with Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes project. They are within the map 11. So they're being looked at as potentially for park purposes. And I think these lands are for the most part owned by the province. So it's not a private sector problem. But further on down the path in the policy path, somewhere else, maybe 50 pages along in the regional plan document, there are some transportation policies, and they provide for a 3-kilometer subdivision road going right through the middle of all of this. So very conflicting policies. And then there was a staff report around 2014 thereabouts in connection with all of this and what was happening with the 3-kilometer road. And that report focused virtually entirely on the development opportunity of getting a municipality getting a free road at the cost of developers to make that 3-kilometer connection between 2 subdivisions. Next slide.
Mary Ellen, your time is up, but since we had technical difficulties, I'll give you a couple more minutes. Please proceed. Thank you.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much. So only 2 more observations here. And the next one is that there's a provision in the charter which says that if you're looking at acquiring land for a public purpose, so that's a broad statement. That would be for a rink, for whatever, including for parks, which is a lot of our focus here today. Council has 1 year to decide and find the dollars to make that happen. However, 2 sections further along, it gives council 5 years if what you're looking to acquire and trying to take a decision on and find the dollars to make happen, that has 5 years for a road. And so we're seeing some discrimination happening between roads and other public purposes. And it's not really clear why one would have a bigger priority than the other. And so we've had some significant, the HRM Alliance has had some discussions with the various provincial ministers on this subject. And what we would, you know, they're always interested in doing things that the municipality supports, especially when it comes to the charter. And we're suggesting that there be a letter of non-objection from HRM on this subject. It would be very, very helpful. Moving on to the next and last observation. I think we moved on, but moved back. Thank you very much. Further to the Green Network Plan comments, there were 79 recommendations, you'll remember. One of those, number 18, was that there be an amendment to the charter regarding wetlands and steep slopes, which council supported, and our letter was written in December of 2018, received by the province, acknowledged 3 months later in February 2019. And that's the last we've heard of it. And our inquiries here and there, we can't identify any follow-up on the part of HRM. And in talking to one of our local MLAs, former councillor, they indicated that from their perspective, this change would be a win-win, in that they've had complaints from developers who say, well, what can I do with these wetlands and steep slopes that nobody will let me develop on because they aren't conducive to development. Right. And then I'm left with some land just sitting there doing nothing and not doing anything for me, and it doesn't do anything for the community. So anyway, that was an interesting observation that we had from that MLA, former councillor, who, so we're taking that and passing it on to you for your own consideration here to pursue this existing initiative on the part of HRM a little further and see maybe whether a charter amendment can be made to happen here. And with that, that is our conclusion. We're just, as we say, we are just trying to give you the benefit of our observations. We have seen this problem. We don't understand. We feel like often we're spinning our wheels and not making the progress that the level of effort that the community is putting in to sustainability issues. We're not seeing it materialize the way you would think it would, given the fantastic policy pieces that the HRM already has in place. And so that's why we went looking, okay, wherein do the problems lie? And these are only some suggestions. We've kept them to 6 in the interest of time for this presentation. So thank you very much for the time, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, thank you both for your presentation. Do we have any questions for the floor? Councilor Morris, I suspect you're up there. Councilor Daigle-Galman, you have the floor, man. Yes, yeah, Catherine.
Sorry, I thought it was Catherine first. Thank you so much for the presentation. As a new councillor, this was lovely for me. Thank you. Will the slide deck be available to the members of the committee? So that I can go back and reference and do a little bit of my own researching. And just on that very last slide is the request to the committee that we make a recommendation to regional council to figure out what happened with that recommendation 18? Is that one of the desires of the presentation?
I think some indication, an update on that.
Right.
An update on that subject probably would be not particularly helpful to the councillors to understand what this current status is.
Yeah, and I just would add, Councillor Deagle-Gavin, as far as I understand it, a update on progress from 2021 will be coming to council shortly on the Halifax Green Network plan. And so hopefully that will include Action 18 and perhaps an update there on where that request for amendment change might be. So you could maybe nudge that a little bit if you were willing.
We'll pay attention, absolutely. Okay, thanks.
And thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Morris. You have the floor.
Thank you, and thanks very much for the presentation. I'm sure a lot of work has gone into this and fine-tuning when there's so many outstanding things with the Green Network Plan. I'm sure it was difficult for everyone to narrow it down, but we appreciate that. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more on the request for a letter for regarding land acquisitions. What difference would it make, in your view, if we had the same amount of time to decide on parks acquisition as roads acquisitions?
Well, you know, as all of you have now been through, even the newest of you have been through a number of budget cycles, at least 2, I think, at this stage, and you appreciate what's involved and how long it takes. I mean, it starts in October and it doesn't end till, you know, you're lucky if it ends by the end of March, which it never does. But so it's more than half the year. And so to try and fit a significant decision with respect to park acquisition, which is a long-term decision, it's not like buying tires, and fit that into a budget cycle when it is already a big decision, the 1 year is just not practical, to the point where we've seen minutes where the community has asked that very question, you know, why don't you zone something park? Well, we don't, because there's no time and we don't have money in the budget for acquiring that land. And so from a staff point of view, it seems, from what they've said in, you know, minutes that I've seen from recorded by the clerk's office, it's just not practical. So the 5-year, and so it's clearly not practical for roads either. So you'd never suggest the road decision go to 1 year. And so really the only rationale is they should all be treated the same, and because the decisions are all difficult and they all cost money. So the logical thing seems to be to move it to 5 years. And we don't have it, and anybody we talk to about it never disagrees with the logic. So the problem really is just making it happen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Anything involving a land transaction seems to be quite time consuming. And when you have to fit it into an overall strategy for parks and all that sort of thing, I certainly can see why a 5-year time horizon would be better. So thank you for bringing up that point. And I'd welcome comments from my colleagues about, you know, and I don't know if now is the appropriate time, but whether we could follow up on these 2 items, either through a motion at this meeting, or if it would be better to wait until we get the Green Network annual report, which is coming to us sometime in the next few weeks.
Councillor, I would suggest that we don't have to necessarily wait, but we can, rather than do it on the fly, maybe before either before the next environment committee meeting, bring it forward at that point in time. And if there is not another environment committee meeting, then we can bring it up at the same time when the Green Network Plan review comes up. So,
okay.
I would suggest rather than do it now to make sure, because there may be other suggestions too that we could coordinate with our friends here too. That's just my thought. I don't know if others feel on it.
I think unless the others have anything they'd like to weigh in on, it might be also good to speak with our legal team as well, and what would be the best approach on those 2 items.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deagle-Gavin, second time around.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just, part of me was wanted to think out loud a moment around the 1 year. I know sometimes when there is a land purchase, the time limit wouldn't allow for, like 5 years. Like I remember, I think it was in that first 6 months or so, as a counselor, I remember where there was a land purchase and the timeline on making the offer was pretty limited. It was like seemed short, and therefore the funds came out of a reserve. So I didn't see the 1 year as, and something that was excluding, right? So they can use reserves if it is time limited, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess I was just thinking about that out loud. There may be a significant reason why it was a year. So I'd like to understand that a little bit more before perhaps making a motion to go forward. So the report might say that, or it's a good question that we can ask when it comes forward.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Seeing no others, the only comment I want to make that hasn't already been made, you alluded to the 79 actions. I hope when the review comes back, we have somewhat of a scorecard to see where we are. And maybe that scorecard helps us to advance this file. And I go back to my earlier comments too, when we had the province create their task force and fast track 9 developments, the minister has committed to following the Green Network plan along with some of our other plans. I truly hope that's the case. So we'll see, but we keep bringing that up. So thank you both very much for the work that you do in our community. Thank you for always pushing us. You always do it in a very respectful manner, and so that's fine. It does take a village to protect the environment, and I think we're all on the same page from that perspective. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, colleagues, we have the 2 presentations. We're at number 11, information items brought forward. There are none. There are no reports. And are there any motions? Seeing none. We do have an in-camera item, and I believe we have to go into camera to make a decision. So if I can have a motion to go into camera, please. So moved by Councillor David Gammon, second by Councillor Morse. So we're going to go into camera. So there is another spot in your calendar to go into, and then we'll come back out here to ratify. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Councillor Cleary is trying to get into other meetings right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Jill, we're ready to go? There we go. Awesome. Jill, we're okay to go? Proceed?
We are good to go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Just coming out of in camera, so we're moving on to the next item in the agenda, which are there any added items? Seeing none, notice of motions. Seeing none, public participation. I believe that no one is registered. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct.
So there's no speakers. The next meeting is scheduled for July 7th if we need it. And so if we could have someone call for adjournment, that'd be fantastic.
I so move.
No, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, staff. Really appreciate it. Everybody have a large day out there. It's quite nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.